Hello there, happy travelers. Welcome back to my flight attendant channel. Today we are going to Austin. It's the start of a 3-day trip. Man, I do not know when the last time I did a 3-day trip was, but I have 2 of them back to back, so I'm working 6 days in a row, which if I think about it too much makes me panic a little bit. But I took a lot of time off for our trip to Costa Rica, so I guess I have to work sometime, right? Luckily today is just 1 leg, and then I have 13 hours in Austin, so let's head to the plane. I had to stop by the flight attendant office to put my hair up, so we can actually get kind of in trouble for having our long hair down. Also wanted to put some lipstick on too. So I have a few minutes until boarding. I think I'm just gonna go onto the plane and settle in. Once again, I'm working in the back galley. I really like working back here. It's a little bit calmer during boarding. That's what I've been trying to get lately. Sometimes my mood changes, but usually it's back here. Okay, so we started boarding and then we got a notification of a 3-hour delay. So we've stopped boarding and some people are getting off. This is why I like to be in the back. I guess we don't have pilots. That would be helpful, because I don't know how to fly this plane. I am looking through my contract. I'm pretty sure if the delay sticks at 3 hours, I can get off this trip with no penalty to me, except I won't get paid. So I'm trying to look through the contract. You know, it's all written in legalese, so I have to find it, which I may or may not do. I'm not sure. I want to find it first and see what it says. All right, I was able to get removed from my trip, which is crazy. Even though it was in the contract and I read that it was in there, I've never actually done that before. No arguments from scheduling either, which is a shocker. So I'm gonna go home and figure out something to do for the next couple of days. And then I have another 3-day trip in a few days, so I will be back here. Maybe even tomorrow, depending on if I can pick up a good trip. We'll see. Welcome back, happy travelers. It was really nice to have a couple unexpected days off. I actually got some work done around the house and was able to hang out with this guy right here. But tonight I am going back to work. I mean, unless something else crazy happens, because it is the same flight that I had the other night, so we'll see. I have to start getting ready for my next trip very soon here, but I thought I would talk to you about training first. Kevin collected his thoughts a little bit and he gave me some notes of some things that people might want to know about initial flight attendant training. Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you my experience with training. Now keep in mind, this was 9 years ago. Things are different now. So if you go to training, it's not going to be the exact same experience, but I can generally tell you what it's kind of like. I went to initial flight attendant training in 2014. Back then it was 9 weeks long, which was pretty long. I think it's 6 weeks now for my airline, which is one of the major US airlines. I think they've since cut a lot of stuff out that they didn't think they needed, and we've also retired a few different types of airplanes. So the new hires don't have to learn about those types of airplanes anymore, which significantly shortens the process. After I sort of got the email that said, hey, we want you to come to flight attendant training, it took a while for them to actually tell me when I was gonna go. I was kind of in limbo. It pretty much is just when they have spots in the training classes that they can put you on those. They're also a little bit flexible with it, so if you have a really big problem with when they schedule you for training, you can kind of work with them a little bit, and if they have spots available, they can kind of shuffle you around a little bit. But if you're invited, I recommend you go as early as possible, because the earlier you go, the more seniority you'll have. And seniority is key when it comes to the airlines. So our training was in Texas, and I did not live in Texas, so I had to move to Texas for 9 weeks, basically. I did not take a car, which if I had to do it over again, I might consider actually driving my car from California to Texas. It was kind of a pain to not have a car. It would have been nice to sort of get away from the training facility every now and then, so my class was within the first year of when they started hiring again. There was a huge hiring freeze in the airlines after 9/11. Then in 2013, 2014, they started hiring again. My class actually ended up staying in the training center right there on the airline's campus. A lot of people since then have stayed in hotels, and you'll stay in hotels the whole entire time you're in training. It's totally paid for by the airline. Unless you get extremely lucky for some reason, you will have a roommate, which kind of stinks, but It is what it is. And at least at our airline, they really didn't want you to come with them with roommate problems. They kind of wanted you to work it out in between yourselves, since when you're flying on an airplane, you're largely unsupervised. There's no managers or anyone looking over your shoulders. They wanted to instill that you have to learn how to get the job done and to get along. My roommate was nice. All in all, it could have been worse. So know that you could either be put up at your airline's training center, or you could be in a hotel that's very close by. Even though at the time our training center was pretty outdated and the rooms were pretty small, it was nice being right there, because in case I forgot something in my room or wanted to go take a nap during lunch or something like that, I could just run back to my room, whereas those who were staying in hotels had to abide by the bus schedule. We had all of our meals paid for, 3 meals a day. We ate them at the training center at predetermined times, and they had a cafeteria on campus. They pretty much had everything we needed. They had a gym. They might have had a pool too, but we went, it was like January, February, so I didn't use it at all if they did, which is why I can't really remember if they had one. There was also a bar you could go to if you needed to unwind after one of the long training days. I wouldn't recommend getting too crazy though, because remember, they are watching you at all times. So what a typical day in training was like. So all of our days were different. They would start at different times and end at different times, and we would do different things every single day. And the reasoning behind that was because when you are a flight attendant, every day is different. You will start at different times, end at different times, and they were trying to get you kind of used to that sort of schedule. The airlines have to train you in a lot of FAA regulations. That's the most important part. And the FAA is very, very strict in how the airlines train you, meaning if someone needs to leave the room to go to the bathroom or something like that, the entire class has to stop, because everyone needs to learn that particular thing. It's fun and it's like school, but in the same way, you are also training for a really important job, actually. So we did really need to take it seriously. And it actually made us pretty scared. We used to say that there were cameras in the salt and pepper shakers, because you didn't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. You always had to look presentable. You had to have your hair up, makeup nice, business looking clothes. We kind of had to dress like a flight attendant until we got our uniforms, you know, blazers and blouses and nice slacks or a nice dress, something like that. Suits for the guys. So we went through each aircraft that our airline had. So we would start on the, let's just say 737. So we would learn all about the 737, the different variations we have of the aircraft, and it would be very, very important, obviously, to learn about things like emergency procedures and emergency equipment. We would have tons of diagrams and photos and study materials we would have to go over involving each airplane that our airline operates when it comes to emergency procedures and equipment, and also just the specific airline procedures as well. So you would learn all of this stuff in a classroom setting with an instructor and everyone sitting around taking notes and having our binders and all that stuff. Then at the training center, they have trainers, or basically mini versions of the planes, maybe a few rows of seats, and real working doors, which is one of the most important things you'll learn in flight attendant training, is how to operate the door. Your main function is to learn how to evacuate an airplane. So we would spend a lot of time on those trainers, getting practical instruction on how to open and close the doors, how to use the blowout slides that you use in an evacuation, the medical and emergency equipment on those trainers, so we could see exactly what they look like. We could handle them, we could test them out. Each aircraft lasted about a week. At the end of each aircraft's instruction, you took a test, and our tests were on computers, and you had to get a 90% or above to pass that test. Throughout all of training, I believe at that time you got 2 retakes, and if you failed a 3rd test, then you got kicked out of training. And people do get kicked out of training and leave all the time. The turnover is actually really high. As you can imagine, the stakes are really high, stress is really high, everyone's trying to pass, so a lot of really intense studying going on. And then those people who just can't handle it end up going out and partying and kind of ruining it, so I don't recommend doing that. Most of our time spent in training was spent on each aircraft, on all of the FAA required things, and also just general FAA flight procedures like the safety demonstration and why you have to have your seat back up, and why you have to put your items all the way under the seat in front of you, why we have to tell you guys to do those things, which it makes more sense if you know why. We didn't get a ton of time off during training either, and again, our time off would be on different days of the week. Sometimes we'd have 1 day off, sometimes we'd have a couple of days off. It really varied. Now, as I said, room and board were covered. However, we were not paid for training, which was really difficult. If you're planning on being a flight attendant, I would suggest having your finances in order, saving up money so you can go for a couple months without being paid. That's just my airline. I can't speak for other airlines, so I don't know if some other airlines pay you. That would be nice. Somehow they get around paying you by saying that it's a school and educational program, so they don't have to, which kind of stinks. But if you want to learn the job, that's what you have to do. Because we spent so much time on each aircraft, we didn't have a ton of time to spend on other things like the service part of the aircraft, which is where I think people get really confused about flight attendants, because we spend most of our time training, learning how to evacuate airplanes and how to take care of you in a medical emergency, and really not as much time learning how to do the customer service side of things. You learn that really fast when you actually get on the airplanes and start working, because that makes up 99% of our job. So while we learn that kind of in concept, a lot of that is actually really learned when you get on the planes. It's kind of like trial by fire. But flight attendants are totally willing to help if you're a newbie on the plane, so it's really not that big of a deal. And it's more or less the same every flight, so you get used to it really quickly. Oh, one thing I should mention is while you're doing training, the FAA actually requires you to do work flights. I think it's actually 5 hours of actually being on an airplane and observing the procedures you're learning. So what we would do is on certain days, we would get assigned flights. Like I think I went to Palm Springs and then came back one of the days, and you go and you wear your uniform and you wear your little trainee badge and you sit with the flight attendants, and a lot of times they'll be like, okay, well, here's how you go do a beverage service, and then you'll help them do a beverage service so you can kind of see how things work. And also observe the really important safety things that you've been learning throughout training. So you have to make sure you fulfill however many hours it is for that requirement for the FAA. And it's also nice because you get kind of a little bit of practical training. You get to be like, oh, that's what that is on a real plane. I can see it now. So that was actually pretty fun. And you get a little bit of taste of what it's like to be a flight attendant. I did a really quick Q&A right before this video, and I got one question about last resort training, kind of like 9/11 situations. You definitely do have very important safety and security training, because the reality of the airlines is different now after 9/11. So you do learn how to handle those kinds of situations if it should arise. Hopefully it does not. And you just learn so much stuff in just a few weeks. It's really actually pretty overwhelming and stressful. If you do go to training, I would suggest exercising and keeping your stress level as low as possible. It's a high stakes situation for sure. And for a lot of people, it's their dream job. So they may have applied to lots of different airlines or been to training before. So a lot of people want to make it all the way through. And when you've learned all the stuff, then comes graduation. So you have a ceremony. It's just like graduating from high school. You wear your little uniform, you go up and you get your wings pinned on. Your family and friends can come, which is really cool. And then they send you out into the world. They deadheaded us to our base, which just happened to be LA for me, which is great because that's where I live. And they gave us, I think, like 4 days. So if you don't live in base, you have like 4 days to figure your stuff out, which is kind of crazy. And then you start flying. They throw you out there on the deep end, that is for sure. Don't get too discouraged if you don't know what the heck you're doing when you first start, because it comes really quickly. And then before you know it, it's been 9 years. All right, so I think I've rambled on enough about training. If you guys have any really specific questions about the initial flight attendant training, please drop them in the comments below and I will answer those. I should say that you don't have to do that long of a training again. Once you do it and you graduate, you're done. However, the FAA does require that you do a recurrent training every year. And I've done a video on this before. Once a year, you have to go back to the training center and kind of review what you learned in initial training, and ours is 2 days long, so it's not that long at all. And if you don't do that, you cannot fly anymore until you do that training. It is required. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here so you can check out what that's like. But again, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button because that really helps support me. And I am a working flight attendant, so I have lots of flight attendant adventures coming up. You never know where I'm gonna go, except today. I'm going to Austin, hopefully. I was supposed to go to Austin the other day and I didn't actually end up going, so who knows. And I have to go get ready for work now. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. This is Kelly from the Awkward Flight Attendant. Peace out. Luckily, I don't know what that was. My room is a mess. Got a hair, it's biting me. Where is that? you can kind of work with, my cat is trying to get under the door, and take care of you in a medical emergency, and bless you. If you know why we're telling you to do that, it makes a lot more